standing on a booster stand because if I really, I'm down here. So anyways, I hope everyone had some comedy while we worked with the tech stuff. We try to bring the comedy.
All right, here we go.
That's usually my role, Catherine.
I know, I just wanted to try to bring it today. Yeah, so Tula, take it away. So I guess I'll just say Tula had the amazing idea to look at the 5-year strategy that we put together in 2021 or late 2020. It started in 2021, and really like drill down into how are we doing and what could we improve, what could we change. It's one of those things that gets put in plans and you think you're going to do it, and then actually getting around to it is a whole nother thing, and Tula did that. So I just want to give all the credit where credit is due. So yeah, she's going to talk about her process and take it away from here.
Thank you. So yeah, as Catherine mentioned, we have a Rogue Native Plant Partnership strategic plan that was written back in 2020. And as we all know, that feels like a decade ago at this point. So I walked through the whole plan and kind of evaluated where we are with each, with progress toward each goal. And out of that naturally flowed some challenges that we've had in achieving those goals, and then some strengths that we have as an organization and the opportunities that lie within those, and some ideas for moving forward, and also just to capture some other ideas. And how things always just kind of fly at you like, oh, we should do this, we should do this. So I wanted to make sure that we were actually matching those ideas to goals that we have as a partnership, because we are a collaborative group, and it's good to make decisions together moving forward. So those first 3 things in gray are what has been done. So I went out and I've talked with various partner groups, gotten their opinions and ideas about what the Rogue Native Plant Partnership is and what it could be doing. Included some of our regional, like the Umpqua Native Plant Partnership has been a huge influence. Morgan up in the Umpqua has been coordinating that partnership and just doing an amazing job and giving us a lot of inspiration and energy for the Rogue. So the progress report I discussed, and then this winter we're obsessed with mind mapping here at the Understory Initiative. So made a nice graphic visual to kind of help understand where the goals came from, based on values that we have as partnership coordinators and as a group. And I'll show you what those look like. And then next we'll be compiling all those adaptation strategic plan, putting them together to a new document to kind of give us some guidance moving forward in the next few years. And then number 5 is what we're doing here today. We're kind of showing you what we've learned and what we're hoping to do next, and getting some input. And we used a lot of AI for this, which is actually really helpful, because when you're deeply mired in something, it's really hard to summarize and draw conclusions and see patterns. So this is how ChatGPT rated us when I fed it, or Catherine fed it, our progress report.
And we have mostly final draft of the progress report we'll be sharing with everybody after this meeting. There's a little bit of editing and final touches, but these more detail on each goal and how it was evaluated. There's basically a breakdown for each goal. And there's a lot in there. So look forward to that long document, but then also summary tables if you don't want to read a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, numbers can be helpful. I also wanted to point out, Catherine was bummed that we only got a 76.8, but the strategic plan was for 5 years, and we're only about 75% through that. So we're really on track here. And
hey, it's room for improvement, right?
It's room for improvement, and just having to work around some challenges, such as just not having the capacity that we expected, both in terms of funding and in staff, to do some of the nitty-gritty work of the partnership here. And then here's some goals that I'm hoping to move forward with in this year. We have already Catherine has built a new website, and it's really pretty looking, and I can't wait to share that with you. Same URL, roguenativeplants.org, just a different host and a little bit easier layout, I think. And with that will come a new logo representing the Rogue Native Plant Partnership. One thing that I laid awake a little bit last night thinking about was just how much more communication we could be doing around how we produce seed here in the Rogue. The Rogue Native Plant Partnership has done a ton of work, and mostly before I came around, to create systems and processes for getting seeds on the ground and recruiting farmers and trialing different methods of contracting and just all that supply chain. And that's just been kind of happening in the background. And we put out a survey last year, just kind of asking folks, what do you want out of a native plant partnership? And one of the responses was, well, somebody should be growing, producing and providing native seeds. And it was like, oh, well, we are doing that. And maybe we just need to talk about it a little bit more and kind of show those numbers. So I want to get better at doing that. Number 3 is kind of pending a grant that we put in that Catherine will talk a little bit more about later, but it will continue the work of collecting local genetics for woody species that go into restoration projects, especially in riparian and forested areas. And I'm really hoping that we can move forward with that.
And also expanding to grasses and other, non-woody species as well. So we have some cuttings and things that are more genetically appropriate, but then also resources for folks wanting to put understory plants in their projects when they get to that stage. That's currently a bottleneck. So we're trying to help create that capacity ahead of time, knowing that it's going to be useful in the future.
Great. And then one thing we've done well as a partnership and will continue to do is just get people out there collecting native seed, so it can be used for those grow outs and those restoration projects. And in the last year, we've had a few more events where folks can come actually clean seed with us, and that's been really successful. It's just really fun activity, really easy for everyone. So we'll be doing more of that as well. And then number 5 is exploring avenues to assist with seed mix development. And that's something that sort of emerged as a function of the partnership, something we've been doing more and more of the last couple of years, but wasn't really acknowledged in our strategic plan or among any of our grants. It just sort of has to happen if we want to get native seed out there. Not everyone's an ecologist, and people come to us asking, what seeds should I put on this project? Or can you just provide me with a mix that will work for X habitat? So we want to work on both developing more seed mixes, make them available, and also having the time and capacity to work one-on-one with folks so that we're putting the right seed in the right place at the right time. This is a wonderful mind map, and it's really big and has a lot of words on it, so I don't expect you to read it or process it all right now. But essentially the top 5 bubbles there are the partnership values that we decided that we work mostly with, and that came out of a presentation that we made for the National Native Seed Strategy meeting, or sorry, National Native Seed Conference
Yeah.
that Institute for Applied Ecology hosted in February, which is an amazing annual conference. And we had a great response from that presentation. People were really jazzed up about values. And so that was really affirming, and decided we need to incorporate that into our work a little bit more. So here's the 5 values and how they actually connect to our goals. So I wanted to pull out a couple here. So building a tribal engagement strategy, hopefully in the next 12 months, and then implementing it moving forward. And just a lot of work that we've been doing around bringing Indigenous land managers into the scene and creating methods for them to get involved. We want to be doing a lot more of that, so wanted to highlight that one. Traditionally, Rogue Native Plant Partnership has had a steering committee, and that is folks like Molly Morrison and Paul, who've been around a long time and been from the beginning basically involved with the
Kelly
Plant
has
Partnership.
been there the whole time. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And we realized that we have this kind of bulky steering committee. We have like a lot of coordination time put into trying to plan meetings with, that doesn't feel like they really have a key role at this point, because they're like, the partnership has been developed, we have strategic plan, we're moving, and it's just sort of like plugging and playing at this point, getting native seeds grown out, et cetera, et cetera. So we decided that'd be probably make more sense to have you have the steering committee shift to more of an advisory board. So be meeting as needed, and just would share key updates, make key strategy decisions, but it's not so much a quarterly check-in, what the heck are we doing and how are we going to achieve our goals kind of group. So that's good news for you guys. And if anyone is interested in joining such an advisory board, let me know.
I feel like the steering committee did such a good job, they worked themselves out of a job because we just got to a pretty solid place where we're, yeah, able to know so well what everyone's doing, you know, as to the best of our ability, and we're able to stay in communication with you all, that it's less important to have that function, but we also, there's so much knowledge that we want to always keep tapping from. So please consider an advisory board position.
And then what else? Oh yeah, and I just want to focus on this one because it's a little confusing or vague wording, but basically Catherine and I have been doing a lot of work on getting our seed inventory into a database that can sort of track multiple factors of what's going on with the seed. So who owns it, or where did it come from? Where was the wild collection? Was it grown out? Which farm? And what were their production protocols? And that's really going to allow us to easily share a lot of info about not only each native seed lot that goes out into the world, but also how to grow, collect, and increase the amount of seed cleaning. Seed cleaning is a big part of that. So there's just a lot of processes that we know about, but we don't necessarily have written down anywhere. So that'll be a big focus, is on, what if Catherine and I were to just be abducted by aliens tomorrow? Could someone walk into the Selberg Institute seed cleaning facility and know what to do with 10 pounds of Oregon sunshine seed or something like that? Okay. And same with the seed lifestyle tracking, sort of the same idea.
Ooh, can I talk about this one?
Sure, yeah.
For anyone that knows me well, I'm very spreadsheety, and I'm, for that reason, very excited about the database progression that we're on. I will say that since starting working with the partnership in 2016, it was really clear to me that having some kind of a way of tracking the whole restoration process, from scouting to collection, cleaning, on-farm production, on-site restoration, and monitoring. And yeah, the only way to do that I'm aware of is through something like a database. And so I had written grants and tried to get ways to have a database built and do all these things. And I feel like over the last couple of years, there's been multiple attempts. We haven't quite got there. We've sort of been, it just is more than my technical expertise would allow to just build one from scratch. And there weren't really any off-the-shelf options that did everything we wanted to do or could afford. So anyways, I'm really excited. I feel like this combination of technology and open source and, AI technology and all these things are converging very recently to allow organizations like us with relatively little technical knowledge as far as coding to create from scratch a system that will work to, make that information easier to track and share. And so, yeah, it's essentially similar to Airtable, if people are familiar with it, but it's an open source version. And I am still kind of in the finishing process, but it's getting to the point where I'm able to take all the historical seed collection data since 2017 that we have, georeferenced points for. We have phenology data. We have all this data sitting in one place. And then this system is going to allow us to connect all that information to our existing seed lots and have that at our disposal. And then we can follow that seed to the farmer. We can understand, how much seed they put on the ground, how many rows, what they produced. And it's just going to provide this big picture look at things that I have so many questions about, like if you collect this much seed 5 years later, how much does it end up on? And then how well does it do on the restoration site? Like big questions like that. And just to be able to have that gratification of like seeing it through the whole process. I think one of the struggles of our work is everything takes so long. And so you don't get to see, like, you have to really focus on those little wins. And I'm hoping that by looking at data in this way, there can be some lessons learned and just some actual tangible, like being able to see progress that we can all enjoy. And so I'm really excited to leverage this tool to get us to that point. So more to share. We're not quite to the point where it's public, but we're going to work on getting this information ready by the fall to share more broadly. And then this picture on the right, I had Dolly make, and it was, I told it to make like a clip art rendition of a seed database, and I kind of love it so much. So yeah. Kelly's got his hand raised.
So great stuff as I'm hearing this. And of course, you probably already know what I'm going to throw out there relative to the work we're tasked with doing, at least following up our Seeds of Success stuff. And that kind of, I suspect all of this that's all the things they need are factored into this thing too. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we can add, since it's custom built, anything we need to add, we can add. But yeah,
Perfect.
I'm pretty sure we have all the bases covered. And, there's Seeds of Success. We need to find that line of not making actual plant locations public, but I think the information of like volume of seed collected and generally where it came from and then where it went after that, that is a huge resource that it's just been really hard historically to patch those pieces together in a cohesive way, especially for, an area as complex as the Rogue Basin. And so I'm really excited to see where, it's almost like big data, like we're going to have hopefully access to at least a system that will allow us to gather a lot of different types of data and look at them side by side, which hasn't happened before.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? We have a couple minutes. I think that was our last slide before Olivia.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions people have. And again, the second half of the meeting, we're going to talk about some more specifics on things. But yeah, any questions about the strategic plan review? It is available. Well, it's available on the website. If the link has died when I switched over to the new website, let me know and I can prioritize getting that link back up. But it's been available for the last couple of years. So if you want to look over that strategic plan, and then we're also going to be publishing our review of that whole process.
Just a little sneak preview of the new website.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I'm be excited to get feedback. I will say one of the things I'm excited to try to build into this website is maybe even like an area. There's one person here, a couple of people here interested in how to build a partnership and how to, get on hit the ground running with seed production from like a locally based system. And so I am trying to build out a section of the website that's a course on like how we'd recommend going about that, both for things like seed cleaning, but then also more big picture things about like, how do you wrap your head around starting a partnership and what things you need to consider. We have a roadmap that we built and used in the Umpqua. And so I think it's time to like go to Broadway with it. And so I want to bring it to the website. And I think I saw a question up there too. Paul?
Yeah, it's just more of a statement, and I apologize if you cover this. I had to go up and grab a snack, but just an appreciation for the work that RNPP's done over the years and where you've taken this program and the measure of the success. In my eyes, one of the things that was lacking was just the availability to scale up and meet large seed demands, and that just building of foundation stock, the building of the network of growers and the equipment to clean seed and the knowledge and just everything that was basically started from ground zero. Just just acknowledging all the hard work that you folks have steered through the years and brought us to is just really impressive. So kudos.
Thanks, Paul. We miss you. Not that, you haven't got anywhere, but we still miss you. Okay. Do we want to move on to Olivia's talk? Any other questions? I think we're good.
All right, Olivia, I will stop sharing my screen now and move it over to you. Oops,
Oh, she took it.
she took it.
Oh, yeah, good work.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to seize the control. Let's see
That's
if
right.
I can.
What you gotta do sometimes.
Yeah. That's
All
cloudy
right.
right there.
Are you seeing my screen okay?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for having me. It is exciting to be with a bunch of other plant nerds. And I'm also really excited to learn more about the work of the partnership. Lots of really cool things going on. And happy birthday to my mom. Without further ado, so, you know, as restoration practitioners, we are often in the position of planting really long-lived species into forests and other vegetation communities. The Freshwater Trust, where I work, we focus on replanting riparian forests, and we've done that in dozens of riparian forests in Oregon and starting in California and Idaho. We've got many projects in the Rogue Basin, which Caitlin is an expert on. Glad to see you here, Caitlin. We all hope that those forests are around for a really long time to shade the water, eventually fall into the water to create in-stream habitats, serve as nesting sites, feed pollinators, and more for centuries. But we also know that over that time, in the lifespan of these tree species, the climate will change a great deal. There is a neat National Geographic tool that's now behind a paywall, but maybe you can find somebody with a subscription. It will map your current location to to an analog location with a similar future climate. And an example is shown here. This is future climates of a few select areas under the high emissions scenario. Ashland is forecasted to have a similar climate to Northern California foothills. Portland is likely to be similar to Sacramento. So the question becomes, of course, how do we put the right plants in the ground that will provide the best ecosystem services both now under current climates and centuries later under future climates? Which species should we be putting in the ground and which genetic material within a species? So we are currently dealing with novel climates already without modern counterparts. And we also face no analog ecosystems due to both those novel climates and novel organisms interacting with those climates. The movement of plants and animals, including invasive species, into places that they weren't before. So there's been a lot of discussion of what the role of assisted migration might be to help. And assisted migration being sourcing plants from beyond their current ecological boundaries in the hopes that those new plants are better adapted than local plants. And that can mean moving populations within their existing range, actually expanding those ranges, or moving species to entirely new areas. This came up for me after the fires of 2020, which, you know, happened in the Rogue as well as the Willamette and other parts of the state. And we got a call from a landowner who was asking for help replanting their forest and asking what stock we would recommend using. You know, they were looking to their future. So I started digging into a couple tools back then, and I'll talk about some of those as well as some other current projects that are going on. So firstly, which species should we move? There are, as many of you know, quite a few factors that make a particular species adapted to a location. And, what is it that plants are responding to in their environment? That's circadian rhythms that are controlling seed germination, growth, reproduction, often controlled by a combination of temperature and day length. There's temperature in of itself, small changes in minimum temperatures in the winter, maximum temperatures in the summer can have a large impact on cloud cover, rainfall, how long freezing lasts, duration of heat zones, and other things that affect plants. The precipitation and its form, for example, water may be present, but if it's frozen, it's unavailable to plants. Plants and species and genotypes within those species are, of course, adapted to fire regimes and many other environmental factors that you're probably thinking about right now, as well as other organisms. There's the mycorrhizae, the fungal association with the tree roots that are especially important for genotypes that exist at higher latitudes or elevations where nutrients are often less available in the soil. And also insects and pathogens. Some genotypes are adapted to those and others not so much. So there's, when we're talking about assisted migration, it's often in the terms of finding seed sources or plant propagule sources from hotter areas and moving them further north. But it's often not that simple. Importing plants from hotter areas could help address that particular adaptation factor, but at the same time create a mismatch in day length, in winter temperatures, in adaptation to local diseases that accidentally create a dead end. There are a couple tools that I've run into. I'll just show them briefly, and they can help inform which species could be adapted to future climates. The first is the Species Potential Habitat Tool. And here's an image of me playing around with the tool. It shows habitat kept, which is green. For this particular example, which is Doug fir, I think I decided to look at habitat change in 2070. It's also showing habitat lost, which is yellow, and habitat gained for Doug fir in this instance, which is blue. And this tool is currently available. It's really interesting to play with. It's only available for 7 species. As you can probably guess, those are 7 commercially important conifer species. So it's a start. So beyond just species, which genetic material within a species should we be considering? And of course, the same factors as we've already discussed are important for the adaptation of individual ecotypes through, locally adapted genetic variants. There's an interesting tool, the CBOT selection tool, maybe you've run into, that maps the geographic locations of parent seed or propagules that may be well adapted to future climate of your planting site. So an example of that in this particular image, the blue pin there is my hypothetical planting site along Ashen Creek, where I'm interested in planting ponderosa pine in this particular case. And this map is something the tool spits out. It's showing the best locations for parent seed source in, I believe it's 2070, that match the climate at my planting site at that date. So the best locations for seed are in dark orange. Reasonably good matches are in lighter orange. For long-lived species, of course, you want a good match now So the plants can establish well under current climate as well as a good match a century later. And to get that with this tool, you have to run it twice and find the intersection of those two geographies, which is a bit clunky. And there are additional steps to identify actual seed lots to purchase. But again, it's a start. So, you know, on the flip side, why not assisted migration? There are tools available that are informative to help people planning, but they remain experimental. There's just not enough research currently to provide firm guidelines for managing assisted migration. It relies a lot on us, the users, to know about both future climates and the specific requirements of certain species. The available tools are currently geared towards foresters. They represent a small number of commercially important conifers. Riparian trees are mostly lacking. There are no shrubs. I haven't seen any herbaceous plants included. But perhaps most importantly, experts are divided on whether assisted migration is the best thing ever, the next step we should be taking to help ecosystems adapt to rapidly changing climates, or if it really has the potential to be very damaging. So some potential risks of assisted migration. Local plants support webs of species and other ecosystem services. And we all know that, but we also know that those webs and interconnections are often really poorly understood. We don't know if non-local plants will support those other connected organisms in the same way. Plants from elsewhere may be well adapted to future climates, but not to other factors like local soils or pests. And there is some research that has found that plants from non-local sources can actually end up being more susceptible to some pests and pathogens and be reservoirs that lead to buildup of forest pests and pathogens that then export to other populations nearby. Thirdly, local populations already contain genetic diversity, maybe even including some individuals that are already adapted to future climates, plus local soils and pests and all of the other things that they're experiencing in that specific location. So the ideal situation would be to give all of those individuals every chance to reproduce and grow. And there is a risk that importing plants from elsewhere could accidentally swamp out those desirable genetics. And then finally, importing materials from elsewhere, plants and soil, increases the risks of accidentally introducing pests and pathogens from elsewhere, for example, Phytophthora diseases. So what should we do? Here's a couple thoughts, and I hope that other people pipe up also. So we hedge bets. We consider increasing drought and heat tolerant species that are already present around our planting sites. So where I work in the Willamette Valley, largely, those would be increasing the proportions of incense cedar, valley pounders pine, and white alder in the mix. I'd also consider decreasing, but perhaps not eliminating, some species that are expected to not do well under future climates. For me, that would be western red cedar, as an example. Another approach would be to prioritize genetic diversity in local populations and seed sources whenever possible. And then also use existing guidelines for moving genetic material around. There are provisional seed zones, seed transfer zones, and those are often based on robust experimentation, for example, common garden experiments of moving plants around and measuring the effects. And they've been used successfully for a long time. Here's one example of that. On the left is a map of a provisional seed zone, and these are generalized. The seed zones are generalized across species. They're based on winter minimum temperature and aridity, which the experts have chosen as a couple factors that they think will matter most. It's available as a GIS shapefile if you want to integrate it into your own system, which is kind of neat. And on the right is a really old school seed transfer zone. This is for incense cedar, but it is based on a lot of robust research of common garden experiments and then observing what happens over time. And then another recommendation is to develop and stick to plant material standards. I have a feeling that this group in particular has tackled the plant materials topic with spades. At the Freshwater Trust, our plant materials standards say that plants must come from within the same EPA level 3 ecoregion as our restoration site and within 1,000 feet elevation. This is rough guidelines. And then lastly, I think doing what we're all doing right now, you know, we keep learning, we keep talking to each other, finding out what each other are doing, think big picture and long term, because as has been brought up before, research on these long-lived species takes a really long time. It takes forever to observe and see what's happening, but new information and guidelines are continuing to emerge all the time. I must mention one current research project that's going on. This is a collaboration with the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District, the Institute for Applied Ecology, Clean Water Services, which is the wastewater utility in Hillsborough. Perhaps some of you have even been involved in this project already, but this is a long-term common garden experiment to answer the question, which plants tolerate both current conditions and future climates? So this is a project based in the Tualatin River Valley, where I am. It's about an hour west of Portland. The seed lot selection tool is used to identify future climate analogs. So estimating which locations which turn out to be in Southwest Oregon and Northern California, you can kind of see in the purple, pink, and orange splotches, those are anticipated to have climate similar to the Tualatin Valley in 2070, the dark green splotch there. There was a lot of seed and propagule collection in those areas. All of those 24 species of trees and shrubs were just planted up in the Tualatin Valley, and they will be tracked in the long term to see how they perform and which might end up being a great selection for restoration projects up here to match future climates. And that's what I have. I am, if I could pose the first question, maybe, I'm really curious what you folks are doing. What kinds of restoration approaches are you taking to prepare for future climates?
Christy, can I just talk?
Go for it, Christy.
Hi,
And then
Christy.
next.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Oh, I should turn my video on, sorry. Thank you so much. You pulled this together. I've been feeling anxious about this topic for some time. I worry when we don't have much evidence, when humans once again come in a godly way and try to fix things. It makes me uncomfortable. And I loved seeing some concrete examples and some research. I don't have any answers, but I do know that regionally in the Rig Valley, I have been seeing plans where assisted migration are part of them. For instance, in Central Point, there's a plan in this new developed park to plant California sycamore and some other species in riparian areas and not riparian areas along Bear Creek from, Sacramento Valley area. And I've been going, and I do appreciate your hedge all bets chart. I think that makes sense for now with what information we have. And I do hope that we will include at least planting some of the plants we suspect might not do as well, continue to keep them in the mix. And genetic diversity seems very important to me too. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christy. I guess I wanted to speak a little bit to at least the role I see the Rub Native Plant Partnership playing in this dynamic. So as a working group, a partnership of other organizations, it never really felt in alignment with that to dictate how people managed decisions around climate change. And so I think that what we've been really successful in doing is just increasing the amount of knowledge that is available to people buying seeds. So every seed lot that we collect and produce and manage through the Rub Native Plant Partnership, and also tangentially through other projects and organizations, like we have a very high standard of, source identified, we know where it came from, what day it was collected, we have all that information available. It's going to be easier to access now with the database. We always had it, and we kept those records, and that was a priority. And then to have that information be really transparent. And then when we do a seed sale, we group all the seed lots by ecoregion, level 5. And so it's pretty specific. And so the idea is we kind of, that would maybe be the most heavy-handed thing we did, is we would group all the seed lots by ecoregion on the website. So people have to know what ecoregion they're in order to look at the seeds available from that area. So they'd have to work a little harder to pick seeds that did not come from that area for their project. But still, we kind of wanted to leave it, there's a lot of decisions to be made with climate change. And then I guess, Olivia, I have a question with you, and this is maybe more theoretical, but I grapple, similar to Christy, with, okay, we have a lot of bad options potentially. The only way that I've really found to navigate that situation is to think about things in terms of values and a little bit less in terms of, because we don't have enough hard data, we don't have enough research, we don't have a crystal ball. And so if you could, off the top of your head, think of a guiding value that might, in your opinion, lead in a relatively good decision, or at least not a bad decision. And you can think about that and get back to me too, but that's kind of where my headspace is at.
Well, that's a juicy question. I would dovetail on what Christy was saying earlier. For me, so we are very fortunate to manage at our home some acres which include oak forests and some wetlands and a little riparian forest along a creek, whatever. And we don't fully know what we're doing. And I'd say one value that guides me in that is try to be less heavy-handed and just remove harm in the places that are already nice and are far from our house and are otherwise left to the creatures. Just try not to screw up and try to not take actions that are irreversible. Whereas closer to our house and areas that are already human disturbed, we're more comfortable planting species that we've imported from Northern California, like some ceanothus, and it's more managed and it's higher impact, and we're more comfortable having a heavy hand and using those situations to try things out and see how it goes. So I don't know, that feels like maybe a start on a thought. I'd be curious to hear how others approach that too.
And one thing that we've kind of asked people to experiment with is direct seeding for over plug planting or containerized plants. And I'm curious what your thoughts are, what research you've come across indicating that may help with climate mitigation.
Yeah, I love that. I think what's frustrating with direct seeding is that so many factors other than climate are important for success. You know, just a lot of the projects that I'm thinking of right now are not necessarily implemented by restoration practitioners, but might be left in the hands of, you know, landowners who are doing their own work. And you might get appropriate seed lots, but the seeds are put down at the wrong time of year, or the rains just don't happen to come at the time that you're expecting. There's a heat dome that year. It's because seeds are a little bit, I love the fact that they're more resilient to weather and climate. But I hope also, it's hard to know at what point to get discouraged with a certain batch of seeds because it's a mismatch, or if it's just the stars have not aligned with that or any batch of seed, which I was interested, you know, you all had mentioned wanting to track the full cycle of your putting from source to grow out to planting. How do you have good data on how seeds are doing at restoration sites? What does that look like for closing that loop?
We're too young of a organization to be at that stage, but getting, you know, we've had a couple years of seed sales and people we can follow up with that have done various projects. But they've been pretty small scale. And so one of the requirements of the seed sale is anybody who buys more than a pound of seed has to submit a restoration plan, which talks about how their approach is. And so we're hoping we can follow up with certain people in the next couple years, especially now that we have more funding capacity, and actually look at some of that and see at least what they're seeing on the ground as far as successes and not successes, and compare that to the approaches they used. And then we know, you know, the genetic source of those seeds as well. So I think it could be really helpful, but we only have a handful of projects that even fall into that category. And there's a lot of other factors, but I think we're getting there more and more.
Not to put Caitlin on the spot, but Caitlin leads the monitoring for riparian restoration projects in the Rogue, and we do collect data. You know, these are aimed at being riparian forests, so encouraging woody species, but often those do get herbaceous seed applications that are tracked pretty specifically. So I don't know, maybe there's a partnership there, data sharing.
Yeah, and I have seen those reports from Caitlin like last year and maybe the year before, and I think we've supplied some of the pollinator mix seed for those projects. But it's more about having that internal capacity to make those connections and write those reports and analyze those data. And I think we're getting there, and I think having a database where those connections are a little bit more automatic will at least take away one layer of just like the headache of cleaning data from a bunch of different sources that doesn't maybe match up, and having a good system in place. So yeah, it might take a year or two to get there, but I think on the whole, that's what I'm seeing a lot of ecologists wanting to have access to, is just how did my project from 3 years ago do? And finding ways to get those answers.
And that's something that we've built into the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board grant that we applied for late last year to, if successful, will be creating a seed mix of forb, grass, and shrub seeds that are good for riparian habitats in the Rogue, and then putting them out on projects that the Freshwater Trust manages as a pilot experiment. And Freshwater Trust is going to be contributing in-kind monitoring. So we'll have some really relevant data from that, hopefully. And then, do you want to read Danny's
Yeah, I'll
comment?
read Danny's. So Danny says she's in a loud room. She wanted to add to the conversation, ODA has been switching from plug augmentations to using almost exclusively seed. I didn't know that. For a rare mustard in Northeast Oregon, we have done multiple years of seed collection through drought and wet years that are now using and seed increase for these sites to hopefully capture the genetics of plants that can withstand the fluctuations in climate. And yeah, that totally makes sense. Thank you. And I think that is one of the upsides and downsides of using seed. You do have a lot of mortality, and there's a lot of factors that contribute to whether or not a seedling makes it, but the ones that do, man, are they tough. So I think maybe part of the problem, one of the things we try to address with the partnership is availability and being able to factor into restoration project, not just 1 year of really expensive seeding, but having enough seed available. You can do it 3 years in a row, because that's probably what it takes. That's what plants do. Like they try every year to get seed on the ground. And so I think we need to start mirroring the ecosystems we're trying to restore with having redundancy and decadence and some of this, stuff that like maybe doesn't seem efficient to us, but is very, very necessary. So maybe that's a value I would say in approaching climate is how can we add in redundancies? How can we add in second chances? Because we might not get it right in the first or the second or the third try.
So I have a few comments. This is Josh.
Thanks.
So as far as assessing how seed does, there's actually a fair amount of studies going on, and we'll be having we're looking at our seeding efforts in the reservoirs, this spring. So we'll have data, and we're going to be tracking that over time. And we have, super diverse seed mixes. One of the things I've always, I'm a big fan of in all restoration is diversity of plant propagules. So never counting exclusively on just seed or just plugs or just, bare root, right? Because all your sites are different, all your years are different, and all the species behave differently. And it'd be great if we had an encyclopedia that told us which ones do better from what type, but we don't, right? We could start developing that, but even then it's different for each site, right? And timing and everything else. There's a few species that I've been told are terrible from seed. We seeded them anyway, but we also introduced them as plugs. So we're taking that opportunity to kind of follow that along and share that data. And one thing I will say is whenever we do these kinds of studies, I think we should be trying to align our methodology for analysis, because that'd make it easier for everybody, right? Here's a common way to assess your seeding success. And here's the analysis that you can do that's easy, right? And doing that will make it a lot more feasible. We should tap into SOU's new restoration ecology professor. I don't know, you guys probably have talked to Chaya, but she's interested in that stuff and did a lot of that work in the Sierras, looking at plugs versus seed, and will be helping me in the Klamath as well. So stay tuned, everyone. There's information coming on some of these things.
Thanks, Josh. I do want to put in a little plug for this sort of redundancy and collaboration. So both with the climate adapted common garden study that Olivia talked about, obviously that you can see the players in that, but Understory Initiative through sort of like the development of the Rug Native Plant Partnership, like we're actually the ones on the ground in Southern Oregon collecting those seeds and plants to send up to the common garden. And that wouldn't have been possible without all these connections, not only within our region, but all the way through to the Puget Sound. Oh yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that for the Yurok tribe, the Rug Native Plant Partnership was the one who was able to procure sort of like a baseline of seed cleaning equipment. And so the Yurok tribal members who did the seed collection for that project were able to use our machines in our facility at no charge to make sure all the wild collections were cleaned and ready to go to growers. So again, that redundancy, that sharing, that sense of abundance, not trying to silo information or silo resources is really important. So I think with that, we're about ready for a 10-minute break. How are we on time?
Let's make it a 7-minute break.
So what time will we come back?
Let's come back at, well, let's just go for it, 2:30.
2:30.
Yeah. Thank you, Olivia, and feel free to drop further questions into the chat. I can capture them in the notes and send them to Olivia later.